right now I'm working as the Executive Director of Usef, Nepal, which is also known as the Fulbright Commission in Nepal. So I've been in this position for 3 years now. The Fulbright Commission here in Nepal, as it does in 150 different countries around the world, is a program of educational exchange. So Nepalis go to the US to study and do research, and Americans come here to Nepal to study and teach and do research. So I'm currently working in this position, but I've been living here in Nepal for about 15 of the last 22 years. So most of my adult life has been spent here in Nepal. I came to Nepal initially in 1990 as a Peace Corps volunteer. And now the Peace Corps volunteer group has just arrived, so that's very good news, I think, for Nepal. And at that time I lived in Dailek district, which at that time, the school that I taught in 1990, was a small Sri Janakalyan Mabi, and at that time I taught English and math. Although I'm not quite sure if the students really understood my math because my Nepali language at that time was quite poor. But that was 1990 when there were no roads that had been built yet to go to Dailek district. So it was about 13 hours walk from Surkhet to Dailek. And I stayed at that school for 1 year. So that began my history of life here in Nepal. I had come when I was 24 years old, just after I had finished my bachelor's degree, and have spent most of my life here in Nepal since then, actually. I had a very small dream. I never really think about the future, actually. So I didn't have a sense of, oh, you know, yo thulo manche hunchu, testo testo. I never thought those kinds of things, because I never thought that that was possible. You know, I was just a simple person from a simple place. And I thought, oh, I'll get married and have 5 children and I'll be a school teacher. and I think that was a very common dream for girls, you know, in my circumstances. Well, in my own life, I grew up in a fairly comfortable circumstances, actually, because my father worked very hard, and he had a very strong work ethic. So myself, in fact, I started work when I was 12 years old. I started delivering newspapers. So I delivered newspapers in the mornings and on Sunday. In the US, in my city that I grew up in, Boston, on Sunday there's a very thick paper. So it's very heavy to carry around at 5 o'clock in the morning and deliver to everybody's house. And it also teaches you some sense of responsibility. Because you have to take responsibility for delivering those papers every day, and you have to collect the money and then give in the accounts. So from the age of 12, I started working. And then in the US, because they have laws against child labor, you can only do that kind of simple type of work when you're very young. But from 15 is when you can legally start working in the US. And I got a legal permit to work at the age of 15, and I cleaned toilets, actually, in an old age home. And so I learned from a very young age how to be disciplined and showing up on time for work and be disciplined in doing work. So from the age of 15 and even through high school and college, I worked 2-3 jobs to help earn a little bit of money so that I didn't have to put a burden on my parents to pay for my college. But also, I mean, I was a house cleaner. So I had to ensure that all of the rooms were clean, and I had to do that. And then from there, slowly, after that kind of work experience, then I also started working in a bank. And I did various things. I worked in my college cafeteria. So throughout my life, I've always been working in some jobs so that I could be financially independent. I do remember one situation. I was working in this old age home, and there was many of the older people in that home were very sick. So nurses had to come and take care of them, and many of them didn't really speak because they were so sick. But some were not very sick. and they were staying in that place just because they needed people to make sure they didn't fall and that sort of thing. And there was one woman who was not very sick. She was very alert, and she obviously had a very rich and full life. And I used to go in and talk to her, even though she was a little bit of a prickly person. She wasn't a very friendly person. Nevertheless, I went in and talked to her all the time. And she never had any visitors, that lady. But I always spoke to her very nicely, and I always tried to talk with her a little bit, because I noticed that she seemed lonely to me. And then one Christmas, my family, we had got some flowers and plants from relatives. And we had a lot of these. We had maybe 5, 6 of these beautiful flowering plants that you get for Christmas time. And I asked my mother if I could take one of those, even though it was a gift to us, if I could take it to the nursing home. And my mother said, you know, why would you want to do something like that? You know, this is from our cousin. And I said, oh, well, I have my own reasons. And I came on Christmas and I gave it to that lady, to that woman. And she was very quiet, and she just took it and she didn't say anything. But I could tell that she was very touched that I thought about her on Christmas in that way, because Christmas is such a family holiday and you have to think of other people. And so people who don't have family to come visit them or to go to their family home, you know, it can be very extremely lonely. And so later, I guess that lady had told the people in the nursing home about it, and they all appreciated that. They thought it was a very thoughtful thing. I mean, at the time I was only 16 years old or something like that, but so that's one of the nostalgic moments about that. Otherwise, it was very hard work, and dirty and hard work. But I met many good people doing that work.
Some moments last a lifetime. Classic diamond jewelers.
So what the Fulbright Commission does, it's an exchange program, which I think is a really important aspect of this program that makes it different than other scholarship schemes. So the Fulbright program actually has been operating in Nepal since 1952. This organization was officially established in 1961. So we have a 51-year history. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary. But the first Fulbrighters from Nepal actually left Nepal in 1952 to study in the United States. So, as I had mentioned earlier, this J. William Fulbright, for whom this program is named, a visionary. He has a vision for world peace through people-to-people exchanges. So through this program, there's the Fulbright Scholarship, which allows Nepali academics and postdoctoral researchers and master's level students to go to the U.S., study. The main program is a 2-year master's program, and we have a very big competition for that every year. There's also a postdoctoral research program for people who already have their PhDs to go and deepen their own research and build connections and networks in the U.S., publish in international journals and that sort of thing. Then there's also the Humphrey Fellowship, which is for mid-career professionals. And that's a wonderful program, a 10-month non-degree program where people either they have to be doing some sort of service to the country, whether that be government bureaucrats or people who work in NGOs or people who work in media, go there to the U.S. and do some academic work, but mainly professional development through that program. And then we have a very small, fairly new program for undergraduates from non-elite communities and that's called the NESA U-Grad program, and that is also a one-year program for undergraduates to have an experience of the American educational system at the bachelor's level. So those are all the scholarships that we provide for Nepalis going that way. We also have Americans who come this way, and they teach at TU, KU, or the Patna Academy of Health Sciences, also Kathmandu School of Law, or they might do their own independent research. But the student researchers do their own research projects, and that might be leading to a master's degree or a PhD, or it might be independent. Also, we have a very new and exciting program, which is the English Teaching Assistant Program. Young people come from the US for 8 months, and they're placed in Nepali government schools. And they teach along with the English teachers in those schools. Right now they're in Gorkha district. We have 5 ETAs in Gorkha district and 3 in Lalitpur district. And they teach in government schools to help improve the English language education there. They also work with the Nepal English Language Teachers Association. Inspiring to me in life is my maternal grandmother, who, when I applied to the Peace Corps after I had finished college, she was 75 at the time, and I was preparing to come here to Nepal, which for my family it was a very difficult thing to let their daughter go all the way across the globe. And my grandmother said, "Oh, if I were only 70, I would come with you." So she was always a very big inspiration to me in life. She lived to the age of 93. And up until the age of 92, basically, she was doing voluntary service, which was a big inspiration for me. She worked in homeless shelters, she worked in old age homes, and she worked for the church, for the Christian church, the Catholic Church. So even though she never had paid employment, she was always volunteering. And so I grew up with a sense of that kind of samajik sewa, they say, social service. And I grew up being inspired by her, but also my husband. I feel that I do everything I do with his help, and only with his help. I do think that it's important for people to continue to be inspired by other people and look at the good in other people. There are many friends I have who see the positive side of other people. And I think those are the kinds of things that help any problem in life. When things get very difficult for you yourself, or things get difficult for the people around you, try to find something that makes you smile, whether it's a little baby or a flower or something like that. And I think especially right now when there's a lot of cynicism and discouragement, and it can feel as though things will never change. But my sense is that things are changing, and they're changing in good ways. Sometimes it's 1 step forward and 3 steps back, but remember the good changes, the positive changes, and appreciate those changes, and appreciate the people who have helped those changes to come into being. Because when we began this conversation, we talked about, nobody ever stands alone. There are always the people who have helped you get to where you've gotten to.